Hi, and welcome to the latest Tech Trends podcast brought to you by Plus, IoT Now, and the Evolving Enterprise. I'm Jeremy Cowan, and I am delighted you're joining us for today's sometimes serious, sometimes light-hearted look at digital transformation for enterprises. Our first guest is Sunil Diaz, General Manager of Canada-based Enghouse Networks. Enghouse Networks offers a wide range of OSS and BSS software applications, geographical information systems, network infrastructure, IPTV, and video collaboration solutions. Enghouse Networks are our sponsors for today's podcast. So, big thanks to them, and in particular, a warm welcome to you, Sunil.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And our other guest may be new to the pod, but he's from an analyst firm we know well. That's MachNation. Josh Taubenheim is an IoT analyst who's joining us from North Carolina. And recent visitors to IoT-now.com may recognize his name, as Josh has written a great article for us recently on optimizing IoT deployments, and we hope we'll persuade him to do many more. So welcome to you too, Josh.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you both. And later on, Josh and I will be interviewing Sunil, exploring his vision for 5G and IoT and much more, and asking about the arrival of new players in the telco space and what this means for new services. And finally, in What the Tech, we'll share what's made each of us smile or maybe frown lately. Anyway, let's dive straight into the news headlines. Sunil, what have you spotted in the news?
Most recently, I was reading about Alphabet, that Google's subsidiary that launched their internet balloons, I guess, loons to cover, and in partnership with Telecom Kenya, launched their stratospheric balloon project. So the launch took place from Puerto Rico and headed south to Peru, circumnavigating the globe and landing in Baja, Mexico, almost 100 flight systems in the air. And the main purpose of doing this was to beam internet connectivity into rural and remote and underserved areas. So, pretty interesting use case given what's happening with COVID and work from home environment and the challenges that many areas of the world are facing in internet bandwidth and connectivity.
I find it fascinating that they're able to circumnavigate the globe. When you say 100 flight systems, does that mean 100 aircraft that are interlinked and handing off to one another?
Yes, they call it a fleet, so I'm not sure if it's aircraft or if it's a fleet of balloons. Dig more into it, but it certainly seems like a massive fleet that's circumnavigating the world.
Yeah, I understand. Actually, from what I've read, that it is balloons, but I hadn't appreciated before you raised this, and I had a look at what you wanted to mention, that it was such a complex dance that seems to be going around the stratosphere. I find it absolutely amazing, and keeping that for 312 days is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe their prior record was for 89 days. So that's interesting.
And even better, Loon is, from what I understand, already earning revenues. You've mentioned Telecom Kenya, and anyone familiar with the mobile comms environment will know that Kenya it's not the first time in the headlines for innovation, because Kenya was one of the first countries in the world to launch mobile money and banking services. So I, for one, plan to watch this with some seriousness and growing interest. Josh, was this something that you'd come across before?
I was actually kind of curious how it relates to, are you guys familiar with the Starlink project that Elon Musk and SpaceX have launched, where they've launched all these satellites to provide internet connectivity around the globe, but this is actually like in orbit. It kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's an orbiting link, and obviously comparable in its intention and its goals. I'm not sure how far they've got with that, but I know that it certainly hasn't been dropped. There's another service that I might mention that later, because there's a very similar sort of thing going on in other quarters, but we'll come to that in a while. Josh, what tech stories caught your eye?
Well, so something I saw recently, and it's really something I've been following sort of throughout all of 2020, is this issue of cybersecurity in connected IoT devices. And in particular, this news article I saw was warning of a sort of a large impending cyber attack on healthcare infrastructure systems. Being in the U.S., I'm sure everybody's familiar. We've been seeing this recent uptick in COVID-19 cases, and our hospitals are, if not overloaded, already close to the breaking point. It's really been a trend throughout the last couple of years that as more devices have come online, obviously more vulnerabilities have been exposed. It's been something that there's been multiple security firms and government agencies warning of this massive cybersecurity attack, malware attack that would lock critical systems out from hospitals, that would prevent our frontline workers who are already overworked. And I think the last thing on their mind probably is their IT infrastructure. These nurses and these doctors trying to provide care. If this sort of cybersecurity, hack and these attacks continue to happen, it's only really going to make things worse. So that is, something that jumped out to me in the last week or so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the things that's come over to me covering security over the years in telco IT, but increasingly Internet of Things, is the number of security firms that say that if a hacker is determined to get in, a bit like a burglar, they probably will. So it's not just about ensuring that you have the security to try and make yours a place that they struggle to get into, so hopefully they'll go somewhere else. But it's also about thinking about what we all do next if it happens. If it happens to us in our firms and our organizations, in this case in hospitals, I mean, do we have plans in place for when IT goes down? What's our planned response? Do we even have one? Where is our backup data, and how can we access it? I think these are questions that an awful lot of organizations could do with asking themselves.
Absolutely. And when these attacks happen, the healthcare workers are essentially reduced to pen and paper, really limiting their ability to provide that care that we desperately need, especially now. And I think it's just increasingly a relevant topic to cover in 2020 especially.
I think it's true of hospitals just as much as it's true of any of our organizations. Can we even function while we try and bring back online? And I'm sure we've all read stories. I've certainly written stories about the trend towards ransomware. Sunil, was there anything that struck about this story?
Well, it's interesting as we think of IoT and the proliferation of devices, especially in the context of healthcare. Cybersecurity, I guess, is one big aspect of it. The other is essentially the connectivity that is required, and our communication service providers that are coming to grasps with how to interplay connectivity and cybersecurity. So that's an interesting aspect. Yeah,
I think if you're in the US, you could probably benefit from checking out the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. You'll find them at CISA.gov, CISA.gov. And there are, of course, parallel agencies in many other countries. I only mentioned that one because it was a story emanating from the US. Anyway, it seems to be our week for looking up at the skies, because as I was hinting, there was a similar tech story that I noticed from Reuters in Berlin. It's headlined Deutsche Telekom tests mobile antenna in the stratosphere. And apparently the German telco has also successfully tested an aerial mobile comms base station in the stratosphere, aiming to reach remote areas that are probably uneconomical for earthly networks. Apparently DT is working with its partner, the UK-based startup Stratospheric Platforms, what else would they be called, has connected its terrestrial 4G network to a remotely piloted aircraft flying at over 14,000 meters. That's about 45,000 feet, I guess. So according to Deutsche Telekom, this gives the aerial base station a 90-mile wide footprint. That's about 140 kilometers in other money. So, of course, this is going to bring 4G services one step closer in remote areas. But from what I understand, the partners are also looking further ahead beyond web access or voice and video calls for smartphone users. The telco thinks it could actually enhance 5G networks to enable services like autonomous cars. Now, Sunil, you mentioned the rival service starting from Alphabet's Loon using high-altitude balloons. And we know that a couple of years ago, Facebook grounded its own solar-powered drone. It seems Deutsche Telekom's been using a propeller plane in test flights instead of balloons over southern Germany, and something must be going right because Stratospheric Platform is developing its own pilotless aircraft, and it's got a wingspan as big as a jumbo jet. The numbers involved in these things are extraordinary. I don't think it can manage 312 days of coverage yet, like Google, but it has stayed aloft for 9 days. So the next plan seems to be to power it with a hydrogen fuel cell stack, and the first flight for that is expected in 2022. Just, I guess, don't hold your breath for the new service because it probably won't be deployed until 2024. The numbers and the scale of these ambitions are breathtaking. What do you make of it, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It forms part Google's other bets, part of their business. If you look at their financial results, Google's done extremely well, but the other bets part of their business apparently posted an operating loss of over $1 billion on a revenue of $187 million. Well, that's Google, but when you look at communication service providers and the telcos looking to also move into these other bets and trying to move up the value chain, that's an interesting industry shift, I guess. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. But, the telcos were always this state utility providing connectivity and pipes, but to see the transformation moving into, I guess, digital transformation and other bets is interesting.
Yeah, this could be hardly further removed from a utility approach. Investing alongside Deutsche Telekom, apparently Stratospherics will be taking new investments. I think the UK firm has already raised somewhere north of £10 million and is looking for another 50 million. That's about $97 million in real money. So nobody said this would be cheap or quick, come to that. Josh, are they going to be getting any of your cash?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not lived in the communication service provider world that much, but it's just from a application perspective to me, how this has become sort of the new arena, I guess, if you will. Like I remember a couple of years ago, fiber was all the rage. I just think from my perspective as studying technology, all the different applications this could have, and maybe going back to that sort of healthcare aspect too, think about like contact tracing and smart cars and wearable tech. I think it's just a fascinating new area that we're going into.
I agree. Now, Sunil, firmly back on the ground, and I want to talk to you about your plans. Enghouse Networks has been developing solutions for the telecoms world for years. Can you expand for our listeners on your philosophy of creating building blocks for the industry?
So Enghouse can be described as coming up with solutions that are complementary open solutions that address industry pain points. At Enghouse, we have over 50 products in our portfolio. Enghouse has grown through acquisition and consolidation. I've been with the company for over 12 years, and during that time, we have integrated over 17 acquisitions in the division that I oversee, which is Enghouse Networks. So we are creating a significant value for our customers versus our customers looking at best of breed applications and doing the integration on their own. The idea of openness is built on common frameworks, microservices, APIs, configurable, multi-capability. And then when we talk of reliability, look, our systems, our solutions support communication infrastructure for critical areas such as telehealth and healthcare that are emerging. So they have to work consistently. They have to be reliable, and that has been our pedigree and where we have come from over the last 30 years or so in Enghouse.
Sunil, I kind of had a follow-up question to Jeremy's. You mentioned sort of these new emerging services that the telecoms, it's really had been sort of a transformation over the past 2 decades. Can you offer some insight into what changes you've noticed the most as the new players are sort of entering the market and offering these new services?
So the industry in general, the telco, is driven by a massive change and I'd say disruption that by the way has been happening for a couple of years, and from some key areas. One is the emergence of cloud computing and the expectation for ubiquitous, infinite capacity and resource pooling. So essentially moving away from bare metal to infrastructure, building blocks in the cloud. That's a combination of compute, storage, and network capability, platforms as a service, and software as service applications. The other big area is that when we look at big data, it continues to evolve along 3 dimensions, along size. That's the amount of data being generated. Think of smartphones and social media and connected cars, and the speed, the rate at which that data grows, as well as a shape. So data is no longer just about some structured data that's sitting in a relational database, but we are talking about images and video and telemetry, texts and emails, social media content and unstructured data. The third element is artificial intelligence. Now, AI has been around since the 1950s, but what has changed is the proliferation of data and big data. So it continues to grow along these 3 dimensions, growing in size, speed, and shape. And we no longer talk about bits and bytes and megabytes. We are talking about zettabytes, which is 1 sextillion bytes, or 1,000 to the power of 7 bytes, essentially. The difference is that artificial intelligence, although it has been around since the 1950s, it now has this massive amount of and diverse data set to be able to work on that improves the outcome and the precision of the outcome. And the last element is, Josh, you talked about the Internet of Things. I've read a definition for it. It's the ubiquitous censoring of value chains, so that all the devices in the chains become remotely machine addressable in near real time. So when you think of the volume of data, the rate of proliferation of sensors, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and cloud computing, the telco essentially is the hub of all this exciting connectivity that is transforming this data. So telcos around the world, as you know, are scrambling to react to this proliferation of networked communication and to be able to transport this data, which is bursty and elastic. It is no longer about voice and messaging and connecting humans. It's all about machine to machine interaction. So we're seeing a massive transformation that began a couple of years ago, but I believe will continue to evolve and gain momentum as we move along in a post-COVID era.
Yeah, Sunil, you said before you have a vision for self-healing, zero-fault and autonomous networks, bringing connectivity in both 5G and the IoT era. Can you tell us a bit more about how you envisage this?
Yeah, so when we talk about the transformation that is a result of big data, and you think about the network can no longer be designed, planned, and engineered in a static manner. It will have to be elastic to be able to scale up and down. It will need to be automated, the provisioning and the scalability of the network. AI and machine learning will be fundamental building blocks of dynamically configuring networks in real time to deal with bursty and massive data traffic volumes. We're able to significantly reduce human interaction between man and machine. I think I saw Nokia beginning to use the term extreme automation. So when we move to this new idea of extreme automation and closed loop feedback systems, where the network can automatically be continuously adapt to changing external parameters. For example, again, in the context of the subject that Josh loves, IoT, think of an oil wellhead blowout that is an impending environmental disaster that can cause a whole bunch of sensors in a particular region of the network to send massive amounts of data across the network for a very short period of time, right? You cannot really effectively pre-provision and engineer the network to deal with those types of scenarios. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to provide both the required degree of automation and zero fault tolerance needed to support these types of evolving networks.
Sunil, you mentioned a couple times now talking about this concept of this massive amount of data coming over a network. Telecoms are going to need a pretty robust infrastructure to support all this data, as you've sort of talked about. And I think I mentioned it earlier, but can you speak to sort of the role that fiber deployments might play in that, and what sort of the other value-added services you've described? How are CSPs going to use those to differentiate themselves?
Okay, at the risk of, I guess, some objection from our audience here, I would say that 5G is fiber, and until some other wireless technology, such as 5G, is proven at scale, which I think is many years out. Fiber is probably one of the only mediums that can deliver infinite or near infinite capability and secure services to the premise, whether it be at home, as we are increasingly witnessing in a work from home environment, or connectivity to a data center or a cloud, or an industrial premise. In any event, even if we see wireless replace some of that capability of fiber in the last mile, it's pretty much going to remain the backbone of connecting devices in the network, and wireless antenna is an example in the context of 5G.
Thanks, Sunil. I'm guessing if people want to know more about everything that you've just described, the best place to find out would be at enghousenetworks.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Brilliant. I can recommend it. I've had a look at the website already, and there is a ton of stuff to understand there. So probably worth getting a few minutes and a cup of coffee and going having a look. Okay, guys, we've reached the section of the podcast called What the Tech, where we share the tech stories that either amused or amazed us. Josh, you first this time. What's caught your eye?
Well, I might have taken it a little too literally when I was looking around because I found a rather humorous article about teaching AI humor and the challenges with that. Everybody has a that crazy uncle or that grandpa with the one-liners, and you can knock him out. And there's this kind of interesting article about teaching AI algorithms to generate its own jokes, and to some pretty funny results. Things like I like my war like my coffee cold. And one of the challenges they're experiencing is that, and it's sort of a fun sort of thought process about what is actually humor to humans. It's sort of categorical and ambiguous. It's hard to define. So it's difficult to train an AI to actually think like a human brain because there are so many different factors into what makes us laugh. So it was just interesting to see what these researchers would come up with teaching this AI some sort of basic humor algorithms, and it would just sort of come up with often funny, sometimes inappropriate things. I won't cite them here.
Yes, please don't.
And it's sort of a reflection on ourselves too. We try to teach AI what we think is funny, and then it comes back and, well, it's not funny. It's just structured like your typical knock knock joke or your I like my X like my Y. And it was really sort of a fun read, and it was kind of humorous to see the challenges and what would come out of it. Trying to train this AI model to be funny.
It's strange, isn't it? Because you often think of humor being dominated by people who are spontaneous and wacky, and I'm not sure AI does. Well, it can do spontaneity because it's quick, but it doesn't do wacky.
No, it's absolutely great at performing basic tasks that have sort of a linear approach to them, but it turns out it's not very good at taking all these different factors that are sort of hard to define. Maybe what's funny to me is not funny to you. And it's kind of just an interesting sort of look into how our relationship with technology and how we're trying to shape it and the different results that come out of that.
Yeah, I can't help thinking that Monty Python's crown is still fairly safe.
They actually reference Monty Python in this article. They were trying to get it to replicate some of the jokes that come out of that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, right? That's the thing. I don't think a computer would not come up with that. It just doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem feasible. That it seems like it has to come from Monty Python, right? It has to come from a brain that has all of these different worldviews and different factors attributed to it. So it's just sort of it's funny to see what comes out of it. It's sort of more of a reflection on ourselves rather than technology.
I think it is. Sunil, what made you smile or frustrated you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if if this is funny or not, but I read about this restaurant in Seoul in South Korea that came up with an AI robot that serves customers, and they did this in order to minimize human contact and help with social distancing. So it's after customers order food through a touch screen. I guess many restaurants now have iPads, and you can order your food off the menu on a touch screen. But this was actually about a 1.5 meter tall robot that's developed by a South Korean telecoms company called KT Corp that brings the food, and it uses virtual simultaneous, it's called SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping to avoid obstacles and navigate around customers. The robot can apparently deliver food to up to 4 tables at once using KT's AI platform. It's equipped with food trays, can carry up to 30 kilograms, and an LCD screen. And get this, it can communicate both in Korean and English. So you can just think about how you might want to customize this robot. But it got me thinking as to, if you can do that, then what's next? Can you have a machine replace a chef and automatically produce your food at your table. Would I want to go to a restaurant like that? Would it be fun? I don't know, but it certainly gives you the scale of evolution. I've always felt that technology was an evolution and not a revolution, but this seems to be proving me wrong. And it leaves me wondering as to what's next.
I wonder how long until they put Alexa in those things so you can just talk to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Got to be
Jeff Bezos is going to be all over that.
I've worked in a French restaurant and learned the hard way that I can only do this in one language. So I'll be very impressed with anything that can do it in Korean and English. I would love to watch it trying to navigate around drunken customers, though. That could be really entertaining.
Yeah. Or have the drunken customers navigate around the robot, I think is probably the bigger issue.
Yes, that may come first. I love that. Sadly, the news story that I found isn't one that exactly amazed me, but it's a story we might have wished we never had to write. It's a report from our AI-focused website, The Evolving Enterprise, called Real Fake. Graphic novel aims to explain disinfo and cyber warfare. Among the hazards online today that we've all become familiar with, unfortunately, are deep fakes, fake videos and still images that we could all do without, plus bots and troll farms spreading disinformation. The question that the people behind this work were asking themselves is, how do we train the young to spot a fake? And a report on the EE.ai says that a company called Early Stage Studios has just published a digital graphic novel called, would you believe, Real Fake, as part of the Resilience series that's been commissioned by the US Cyber Infrastructure and Security Agency, CISA, that we mentioned earlier. You see how this is all seamlessly woven together. Real Fake will use fictional stories, and these are inspired by real-world events to inform and to educate people on the dangers of disinformation and misinformation. Only in Real Fake, the readers get to meet the heroine, Rachel O'Sullivan, a gamer, a patriot, and a member of CIMUS, a group fighting disinformation and foreign interference in elections. Pretty topical, I guess, with the recent US elections. The founder and CEO of Early Stage Studios, who is Farid Haq, tells the EE.ai, while the story is fictional, many of the approaches shown are very much grounded in the reality of the technology we live with and are exposed to almost daily. In the story, a group of citizens, he says, are racing against the clock, and they want to prove who the sponsors of disinformation are via their puppet farms set up around the world to troll democracy. So no small task, and if Early Stage Studios are successful, good luck to them. It's something that we're happy to report, and I'd love to report some success in it. Anyway, I'm afraid, gentlemen, time is up. I can't believe that's shot past already. Let me finish, therefore, by saying a big thank you to Sunil Diaz of Enghouse Networks. Firstly, for sharing your expertise on a wide range of issues, Sunil, and secondly, for sponsoring the podcast. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And my thanks also to Josh Taubenheim of MachNation for your expertise across IoT and a great many other areas. It's been great to have you here, Josh.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been great.
Thank you too, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us around the world. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you find this pod, and go on, be a total star. Give us a 5-star rating and big up the podcast. I hate asking, but it's free, and it makes such a difference when people are looking for a new pod to try out. Until the next time, keep safe, keep checking vanillaplus.com, IoT-now.com, and the EE.ai for tech news and features. And join us again very soon for another Tech Trends podcast looking at enterprise digital transformation. Bye for now.